many people, Henry's relationship with Anne is the most interesting bit, although obviously many other aspects of Henry's life and reign are extremely interesting. There's something about the affair with Anne Boleyn that has always sort of captured people's imagination, and of course it's central to the book The King's Mind because of the effect Anne has on him and the intense interest he has in her, and the various consequences of his involvement with her. I mean, I think ultimately, you know, the big question and the thing which ultimately provides, you know, perhaps the most sort of dramatic, or one of the most dramatic episodes of Henry's reign is, you know, if we look at 1527, Henry is absolutely besotted with this woman. I mean, he can barely think about anything else. She's been offered the position of official mistress and teacher. She's refused. She's not interested unless he's prepared to marry her, which is an extraordinary thing to ask of him, considering that he is, of course, already married. So, 1527, he, you know, and although Henry, I think, people often sort of defame Henry as being some sort of lascivious, lecherous brute, it's quite clear that he was really deeply in love with Anne Boleyn. And she was everything that Catherine was not. She was exciting, she was fun, she was merry, she was extremely sophisticated, cultured, beautiful manners, polished in the courts of Burgundy and France. And she seems to have been inordinately desirable to him. And so he's prepared to put himself and everyone else through what turns out to be in the region of 6 years of struggle, upheaval, in order to secure the divorce and be in a position to marry Anne, and of course critically to have legitimate male heirs with her. And of course, you know, eventually 1533, which is the end of the King's Mind, this first volume. 1533, the thing is settled. You know, he's married her, she's crowned Queen of England. But of course, you know, you can argue that it's only then that the real struggle begins. And so 3 years later, we have the coup, we have the downfall of Anne George Boleyn, the execution, and the execution of the other alleged adulterers. So the big question, how is it that Henry goes from being madly in love with this woman to signing off on her execution, the execution of her brother, and you know, of the other accused? Now, the answer to this question does not emerge for me until the second volume, where we'll move on to events in 34 to 36. but I was very concerned with this first volume to, as it were, sort of lay the foundation, the groundwork, by which we can possibly hope to gain a greater understanding of how things move towards this final tragic conclusion. Just about Anne herself, I mean, I think one thing I was very concerned to really completely ignore all the propaganda about Anne. Most of it put about by Catholic opposition, and this this sort of depiction of her as the strong harlot, the Jezebel, even a witch. She was accused of witchcraft. I mean, all of this is complete nonsense, put about by people who were her bitter enemies. Anne, in fact, was I think she was someone who, I don't think she was sort of a puritanical person. She enjoyed the pleasures of court, and I think she enjoyed very much the trappings of her success, the beautiful houses and the beautiful clothes and the horses and the possessions and everything. But she was also a very devout woman who was deeply attached to her own sort of personal faith, and I think Anne subscribed to the sort of idea of faith, which was to some extent, large extent, the product of the new learning and the reformist movement in Europe. I think that she, to some extent, modelled herself on Marguerite of Angoulême, who of course she spent time with in France at the court of Queen Claude. And I think it's quite reasonable to suggest that Anne was was very serious about the possibility of reforming religion, reforming the church, and certainly wanted to use her influence with Henry to promote this. So she's complex, fascinating character, and of course, as with Henry, one is trying to sort of cut through the propaganda and the lies and the defamation, to try to get some impression of what these people might really have been like, and to convey that to the reader.